Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Meredith and today is the second day of NaNoWriMo. It seems like everybody's doing super well and I am just really proud of everybody. I was watching one in particular and at the end she had this extra content where it was just her talking about how hard it is to actually write a book and how she was just like, oh my gosh, I forgot that this is genuinely super difficult. And I feel like a lot of us are in this position where we are either pantsing or we have a loose outline, but we're doing a lot of work of creating stuff on the spot. And I think I know some people who are jumping into this with no planning at all. So I wanted to give 10 pieces of advice for encouragement and just to recognize that this is tough. I find it difficult to give specific advice when it's things like this where everyone has their own process, but I pulled together some general tips that I found when I did my 50K months. And so in the last 12 months, I've done 4 months where I've gone over 50K in 1 month, and then 2 months where I've gone over 40K in 1 month. So I've been doing a lot of writing, a lot of really high word count months. I have a couple things that I find encouraging to think about when I'm doing these really high word counts and getting discouraged along the way. So here's my advice for actually winning NaNoWriMo. Number 1 is plan ahead. If you can, don't pants it. Why would you put yourself through that if you don't have to? Unless you are a pantser and that is just what happens for you and there's no way to change it. I completely get that. But if you can plan, why I included this in this list, because it's already after NaNoWriMo started and you might be like, how can I possibly plan something? We're already past the start date. But you can keep planning even while you're writing. You can split up your sessions into brainstorming/plotting while also writing the beginning part that maybe you know a little bit better. So when I say plan, there is still time for planning. There is time until the last day to plan the next step. So if you have any extra time and feel like that would be helpful, just remember it's not too late. And if you can't plan, if you can't really plot or do a whole beat sheet, if you just don't have the time or you don't like doing that, I would really suggest at least having checkpoints, because that stops you from meandering. And when you meander because you don't know what your next checkpoint is, you don't know where your character is supposed to go, at least just in big broad strokes, then I tend to get really frustrated and annoyed with myself because I'm like, I don't even like what I'm writing. This is boring. What am I even writing toward? Where's this character going? And so having checkpoints throughout the book is a way for you to keep a tight story even when you're pantsing. So if you figure out those big giant moments, that can really help you to keep yourself interested and to maybe have less of a rewrite if you're actually moving your character through the story really efficiently. And then just keeping it exciting, because then you want to come back and write it the next day. My third tip is for if you actually just don't have time to plan anything, you don't have checkpoints, we just don't know what's going on in the story, or if you do have those checkpoints, but then it's what goes in the middle and we haven't planned anything. And I'm going to really use this tip throughout the whole month, which is basically get your character in trouble. Throw a wrench in their plans, mess up a relationship, give them a decision to make that's difficult. Just throw tension at them. And if you give them a decision, have whatever decision they make actually make things worse. Keep driving the tension forward. Don't let the tension let up. And that doesn't mean that you need to throw off your pacing, right? You still need fast, action-packed moments and slower, more emotional, thoughtful processing moments. But in general, every scene should add more tension. And so if you're pantsing something and you don't know where it's going, but you're like, I'm really bored, the least you can do is just throw in some tension, figure out something that goes wrong, and make it exciting. And then the fourth tip is if you do find yourself meandering, if you're feeling like it's just getting boring and you don't know where it's going, then I would encourage you to take a moment and just stop writing and basically try the headlights method, which is you figure out the next thing. So what is the next moment that's important for the actual plot? Because every scene should really be super integral to the plot. Even if it's a subplot that you're developing, that subplot needs to tie into the overall idea. So stopping and just taking a breather and saying, okay, I'm writing off the rails here. How can I pull myself back on track? What is the next important, interesting thing that needs to happen? And where I am right now in the story, I'm going to take myself from veering off course and veer back on course. And I'm going to fix a point in the distance and write towards it. Connect this scene that I'm writing to that next scene. And it might mean that you're cutting a little bit of the scene off because you realize that the direction you taken it was just not a good one and you need to just yank it back on track. But picking a point in the distance and heading towards it stops you from veering. So if you do find yourself meandering and upset with what you're writing, just take a second, pause, regroup. And then number 5 is basically number 4, but to the extreme. I think we're also focused on word count and just getting words out, which is good. That's the whole point, right? But I think that we do forget that we are writing a story that we want to like, and that if we don't like it, we're not going to want to write it. We're going to feel discouraged. We're going to feel bad about ourselves. We're going to have imposter syndrome. We're going to get upset. All of these emotions cloud your writing. They stop you from focusing. They stop you from being excited. Like, writing is incredibly emotional, and having all your emotions wrapped up in something that you feel like is failing is going to tank you. It's going to tank the whole experience. Yeah, getting in a writing slump is no fun. Instead of writing yourself into a slump because you are upset with the content you're writing but feel like you just have to keep writing for word count, don't do that if you can help it. I think that there actually is a really big benefit to stopping yourself from writing and maybe replacing what you had in mind as a writing session as a brainstorming session, and backtrack. Think about, okay, what are my next possibilities? Let me see if I can just get a better idea of what this character wants or their motivations or where they're headed, and really just flesh out like where you're going and make yourself more excited about the story, make you feel like there's a better foundation for what you're actually doing, and then jump back into the writing and see if you're more excited for it. Sometimes the word count itself is less important than making sure that you're liking what you're writing. There have been days when I have done a huge word count day and wanted to feel good about that, but haven't been able to because I've known that I'd probably have to erase it or go back and rewrite it. And I was like, what was that word count worth if I just wrote only because I knew I had to get a word count in, but every word was torture? Like, if I had spent 20 minutes and brainstormed for that scene, I would have been a lot happier with the words that I'd written. And so that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, those are my tips for the actual writing of when you're sitting down and you're in the trenches. But a couple little bit more general things. What about a writing routine? I don't even know if I subscribe to the idea of a writing routine these days. Everybody has something different that they do. Everybody has something else that works for their life. And I think a writing routine probably is really helpful for a lot of people. I tend to just not have one right now, but I write every single day. And maybe that is a writing routine in and of itself. But I mean the kind where, like, you sit down every day at the same time and you write. I just find that unrealistic. I think life's too unpredictable. But I would say for NaNoWriMo, I mean, of course, make sure you're writing all the days that you can, because that's kind of essential for, winning this thing and hitting the goal here. But I would say write when you can in the day. And I don't give myself a chance to say I don't really feel like it. I just make sure that I do it. But my one tip for anything time-wise during a writing day is start earlier than later. If you have a chance to start earlier, take it. Just like get some words in, because man, those words pile up if you're trying to do this many in one day over and over and over. The discouragement can pile on like that. Get yourself feeling good about your story and your day and your progress. I mean, for me, whenever I wait until like 4 p.m., I'm like, okay, there's still at least 6 hours left in my day. And yet I feel so bad about the amount of words I still have to write that usually if it gets to about 4 p.m. and I haven't written anything, there's a high chance I won't write that day. And I know that's a me problem, but I feel like other people probably have that problem. So if you can, just get a head start. Okay, this one is hard for me to say because I almost don't really do it myself, but I actually think it's good advice that I am trying out this NaNoWriMo for the first time. So it is utilize 2 modes of writing if you can: sprinting and deep work. I am a deep work girl. I don't like sprinting. Like, it puts me in a mindset of distraction. But this week I am trying out only doing writing sprints. And it's kind of fun. I kind of still don't like it. But what it's been helping me with is the fact that there are times in my day where I would never have attempted writing because I know that I can't get to a place of deep work and flow state. But now I'm just putting words down because I'm like, I'll set a timer for 15 minutes and I'll just write. I think it's really useful for writing when you don't exactly have the time to get into that concentration. But also, people who do write usually with just sprinting, I think maybe thinking about doing a deep work session and saying, I'm going to have 2 hours or 3 hours, and I'm just going to get so immersed in this that I forget my life exists. I think that's also a really great mode of writing because it makes your word count fly by really fast, and it gets you so entrenched in the story that you're just there, you're living it, you're breathing it, you're not getting distracted by anything. And so I think being able to harness these two modes of writing gets you a maximum word count, where you can write in the small spaces, you can write in the big spaces, and you can train your brain to work with distraction, and you can train your brain to completely ignore distraction for a long time. So I think if you can do both, try to do both. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to expand. I'm trying to be more open to sprinting. And I think that so far it has helped me get in a higher word count than I would have, because I've been busy these last 2 days. Number 8, it's true for me, but it might not be true for some people. It's write while you have steam. So write as much as you can in the beginning. If you keep feeling like you want to write more, just go for it. Just write more. For me, the more that I write, the more excited I get about the story, the more that we get towards payoff at the end. So we get all of the emotional things are building. We have these relationships growing deeper. Usually you're hitting more moments that you're like, ooh, this is so juicy and good. I can't wait to write this. So like the beginning is a lot of like setup and build up and figuring out kind of where you're going, where your character is going. But once you kind of get past that beginning area, then there's so much momentum. You're like just so gripped by your own story. And I think that's how it is with reading books as well. It's just the progression of a story. It just gets so much more interesting the further you get into it. And having more words under your belt is also going to help you be motivated, because you're like, wow, look how much I've done. This is so cool. If you can power through right now while you're figuring it out and you're getting through the setup, then you're going to have a lot more momentum later on. So I would front load it, and I'm going to do that. And I think a lot of people do. But again, that could be something that some people get burnt out by. So definitely consider that when you're considering that piece of advice is burnout. But for me, it just gets me more excited about the story and kind of avoids burnout if I can get a lot done in the beginning. So see what kind of person you are and see if you should front load it or back load it. I feel like most people really don't backload it, but to each their own. Number 9 is to keep up the healthy habits that keep you happy and healthy, because let's be honest, last NaNoWriMo, I did not go to my gym once. And I should have, because I was just like, writing's more important. And then I just completely disregarded like my physical health. And I was just like, I'd be happier if I was going to the gym and just taking a little bit of time out of my writing day to go do something for me that's good and that's going to keep me healthy and happy. Because if you're not keeping up your mental health and your physical health, the writing is going to suffer because your emotions are affected. So keep up those things, keep up the journaling, talk to your friends, don't shut everybody out. I know this is a big sacrifice and that there's so much time that gets put into this, and it's such a huge task. But if you forget about yourself and your life and the things that are actually going to help you win this, then you are going to suffer and the writing's going to suffer. So hopefully you're staying in the gym and you're eating your vegetables. Number 10, the point of this draft is not to have something perfectly thought through and that has a wonderful structure and great pacing. Like, that's not the point. And if a novel does turn out that way from NaNoWriMo, great, but it's probably because someone put a lot of planning into the beforehand. And there are a lot of people who do that. But for the people who don't, like me this time, because I didn't have enough time, like, my novel's not going to be that great coming out of it. But I'm still doing it because this is a month where we get to just explore and be creative. At the end of NaNoWriMo, you've worked so hard, you put so many hours in, and now what do you have to show for it? You have a draft you might have to rewrite. Well, guess what? At the end of that, even if that's the case, you've discovered so much more about your story that even if you do have to rewrite, you are in such a better place. So give yourself a month to get obsessed with this. If it takes you to a place that's a workable draft, awesome. And if it doesn't, that's totally fine, because you've made so much progress that it doesn't even matter. I'm calling this month my sandbox month. There's a writing quote that goes something along the lines, I did not look this up beforehand, of like, a first draft is just shoveling sand into a sandbox so that later you can build sandcastles. And that's 100% what I'm thinking about this month. It's my sandbox month. I am pulling out story ideas. I'm finding them. I am just wondering about the world and letting myself get wrapped up in it so that later I can really build this architecture of a beautiful sound story. So give yourself a pass to get lost in it. And whether or not the draft is great by the end of the month, it exists. That is something you would not have 30 days ago. So here at the beginning of the month, looking forward, we have a lot of work to do. It's going to be hard. But I also think that there's the opportunity for this month to be like pretty much the most fun month in the entire year because we just give ourselves a pass to be creative and to kind of just be kids playing and using our imaginations. So that's my advice for NaNoWriMo and for writing a lot of words in 1 month. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it so much. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed the content and go ahead and subscribe. We are doing a bunch more NaNoWriMo content and in general, just a lot of writing because that's what we do here. I would love to hear about how your NaNoWriMo is going in the comments below. If you want to leave one, I would love that. Happy writing, good luck, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.